Okay guys, the last section we're going to do for this year is on arc measure, and angle measure with circles. And there are three scenarios that you're going to get. One is what I call the two tangent method. Looks like this. We'll draw a tangent here and one down there. We'll call this angle X. We'll call this arc A, and this one out here arc B. Here's what the theorem says. The measure of angle X is equal to 1/2 arc B minus arc A. So if I put some numbers in here, let's say that this was over here 200 degrees. Then by default, since they both have to add up to 360, this would be 160. Angle X then would be 1/2 of 200 minus 160, otherwise known as 40, and half of 40 would be 20. So angle X over here would be 20 degrees. Now in your work, you're going to solve for X, you're going to solve for A, or you're going to solve for B. Just remember that A plus B, when you have two tangents, is always equal to 360. That's something you need to be aware of. Okay. So when you have two tangents, you're going to get a situation where the angle on the outside where they intersect is 1/2 the difference of the arcs. Angle B, the far one, minus the closest one, not angle B, arc B, minus the closest one, arc A. That leads to the next one, where we have a tangent and a secant. Something like this. Here's a tangent line, there is a secant line. We'll call this angle X again. We'll call this B, the big one, we'll call this A. And there's also a part C over here. It breaks the circle into three parts. Once again, just like the last one, X equals 1/2 the intercepted arc over here, B, minus the closest one, A. And C really has no part in the play of the formula. But sometimes you get a question where they're going to ask you something with that. So let me change the colors. Put orange in here. Let's say this over here was, 100 degrees. And that A was 40. Well, if A is 40 and C is 100, that's 140. That would mean this other one, in order to get to the 360, would have to be 220. Okay. So then X would equal 1/2 of 220, take away 40, which ironically is 180. So half of 180 would mean X equals 90. So it's not drawn to scale here by any way, shape, or form, but you get the idea. So X over here is equal to 1/2 of the intercepted arc B minus A. On the problems you'll get, they'll give you two or three of the four things. They'll give you X, A, B, or C, and you have to solve for what the missing one is. So just remember that A, B, and C add up to 360. Arc A plus arc B plus arc C have to add up to 360. Sometimes they make you kind of figure it out, like in this last one I just did. I said this is 40, this is 100. You have to assume, since the circle, this has to be 220 in order to get your total of 360. So once again, it's 1/2 B minus A, just as it was up here when you had two tangents, B minus A. Now there's one more scenario we have. We have two tangents and a tangent and a secant. Remember, under two tangent, it broke up into two parts, A and B. Tangent and secant broke into three parts, A, B, and C. And our last one is where we have what we call secant. So we'll do one this way and one that way. And we'll call this angle X out here. Now we have part A, part B, part C, and part D. Well, let me change that. I'm thinking of the last part we did. Let me erase this here. All right. Do it this way. Still angle X. We have arc A, arc B, arc C, and way down in here we have arc D. And you guys can probably guess what the formula is going to be. X is going to equal 1/2 of arc B minus arc D. It's really no different before. It's the one on the outside where it cuts off over here, minus the one over here that cuts off. Let me put it a different color. So it's going to be this one, that arc, minus this little arc here, and you take 1/2 of that would be the part you have. So let's go one more, go backwards. Let's say angle X here was 20 degrees, and that B over here was 80 degrees, the arc B. We would say then that 20, the angle, is equal to 1/2 of 80 minus D, and now we'd have to solve for D. Well, multiplying both sides by 2 gives us 40 equals 80 minus D. So if you subtract 80 from both sides, we get negative 40 equals negative D. So therefore, D just has to equal regular good old 40. So in this situation, once again, you get to solve for X, you can solve for B, or you can solve for D. In this scenario, remember that A plus B plus C plus D have to add to 360 because it's a complete circle. So in this scenario, you have 4 parts, A, B, C, and D. But angle X is 1/2 of B minus D, arc B minus D. Up here was the same thing. X is 1/2 of the angle over here cuts through B. Not angle, cut through, arc it cuts through B minus A. And on this one here, angle X is 1/2 again of the arc that cuts through B and A. Here there's only 2 arcs. This scenario there are 3 arcs. In this scenario there are 4 arcs. Now the very last one is where we have 2 intersecting chords. This is actually the easiest one. Save the easiest for last. When you have 2 chords crossing, you get 4 arcs, A, B, C, and D. I find this one a lot easier. So like angle X here. Angle X is 1/2 the sum of the 2 arcs it intercepts. In this case, A plus C. If I change colors, the intercepted arcs are this guy here and this guy over here. We don't really worry about B and D. So X would be 1/2 of A plus C. So if A happened to be 80 and C over here happened to be 60, angle X then would be 1/2 of 60 plus 80, otherwise known as 140. Half of 140 would give you 70. Angle X would equal 70. So they can give you different scenarios here where you have to solve for a missing piece. For example, if I move this up, something like this, where perhaps they're going to tell you that this is 80 degrees, and over here we have arc of being 50, and you have to find this arc over here, arc A. Well, 80 would be 1/2 of A plus 50. Multiplied by 2, 160 is A plus 50. So A would be 110. Arc A is 110. So 2 chords intersecting are much easier. It's the sum. Okay, it's always going to be the sum of the 2 intersecting arcs. So in this case, I'll put it in bolder face here. Let's go purple, and we'll go fat here on this one. It's the sum, of A plus C, whereas in the other scenarios, it's always the difference. It's a difference here. Okay, and it's the difference on the other ones as well. That's too fat. So it's the difference up here on this one. And if we scroll down, was the difference there? It's the difference over here on this one. And then on the third one, it's also the difference right there. So you got difference, difference, and difference. Only time you have the sum is when you have the two chords intersecting each other, such as right down here. Okay. That is it, guys. Go back and look at this as much as you need to. There's just a few problems out of the book I'm going to give you, and then some on Delta Math. Take care.